Hey everyone, this is MusicTechHelpGuy, and welcome to part 20 of my Music Theory for Producers course. Today I want to start what will eventually be several videos on understanding 7th chords. Today we'll specifically be talking about the dominant 7th or major minor 7th chord. So let's do a little review first. So in a previous video we said that you can take any major or minor scale and stack 2/3 on top of any root note and you'll get a triad. So a triad is a chord with 3 notes. So here we have a C major scale with triads stacked on each note for every scale degree to get basically 7 distinct chords. And the chord qualities we got were a major 1, a minor 2, a minor 3, major 4, major 5, minor 6, diminished 7, and then a major 1 chord again. The same principle applies for the natural minor scale. You just get a different arrangement of chords. So here we got a minor 1, a diminished 2, major 3, minor 4, minor 5, major 6, major 7, and then a minor 1 again. I don't know if I pointed this out before, but if you look at the major 1 chord in a major key, and then the major 3 chord in a relative minor key, it's the same chord. You'll see that it's C major in both of these, and it's the same quality. Likewise, the 1 chord in A minor is the same chord as the 6 chord in C major. And if you look at the chord quality patterns, starting on 1 in A minor, you get minor, diminished, major, minor. If we start on 6 over here, it's minor, diminished, major. If we jump over to the 2 chord, minor. And if you keep going, you'll see that the pattern is essentially the same. So I just wanted to point that out in case I hadn't pointed it out before, because C major and A minor are relative keys. And this works for any other relative keys as well, like, say, C minor and E flat major. They're essentially the same notes, just starting on a different tonic note. So when you build triads, you're essentially stacking 2 diatonic thirds to each root note of the scale. So what would happen if we added another layer of diatonic thirds to these triads? Well, let's find out. So I'm going to go into my piano roll here. We'll go over to my C major scale to start. And I'm just going to add an additional diatonic third to each one of these chords. So I'm basically sticking in the key of C major here, but just going a diatonic third and staying within the key. So no flats, no sharps, because there are no sharps and flats in C major. What we get are 7th chords, whereas a triad was 2 stacked thirds above a root note, with the distance between the top and bottom note being an interval of a fifth. With 7th chords, you have 3 stacked thirds above a given root note, with the distance between the top and bottom note being an interval of a seventh. Now, just like with triads, all of these 7th chords we created are not the same. And diving into 7th chords can be pretty complex and confusing, so the only chord that I want to talk about in this video is the dominant 7th chord, also known as the major minor 7th chord, which in major keys only naturally exists diatonically on the 5 chord. Hence why it's called the dominant 7th, because it's on the 5 chord, which is also known as the dominant chord. So let's just get rid of all these other 7ths for now. And just work with the dominant 7th chord. And the way you notate this in Roman numerals is you just simply add a 7 to it. It's that simple. And the same goes for modern chord symbols. We'd call this G for G major, but we just add a 7th to it, designating that it's a G dominant or G major minor 7th chord. We'll talk more about the different symbols for the various different 7th chords in a later video when we get into those. Now, we're not going to get into 7th chord inversions and voice leading yet in this video, but when you use a 5-7 chord and go to the 1 chord, like in C major here, You not only end up with this B to C sort of upward T-Do resolution, so sort of like solfege, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. There's a lot of weight and a lot of pull behind the T-Do. That B, the third and the 5/7 chord, really wants to pull up and resolve to the tonic note, which is the root note of the 1 chord. So not only do you get that, which you normally get with just triads, you also get this downward resolution from this added F, the 7th, down to the 3rd of the 1 chord. So you get this upward resolution of BC and downward resolution of FE. And it's the same for any 5/7 to 1 cadence or chord progression in any major key. So turning the 5 chord into a 5/7 chord gives the 5 chord more weight and musically gives it even more tension to resolve to the 1 chord than the 5 chord had on its own. Let's take a look at this in minor now. So I'll do the same thing I did before, and I'll add a diatonic 7th to each of these chords in A minor. So just like before, not all of these chords are dominant or major minor 7th chords. Each one has a different quality to it, but I just want to play these back for you as well. Now, the reason why I pointed out the chord pattern similarity between a minor key and a major key is because the 7 chord in a minor key is the same chord as the 5 chord in a major key. Note that this is G7 over here, and this is also G7. So diatonically, the 7 chord is a 7/7 chord, a 7 dominant 7th chord in A minor, but it's really a major minor triad. We don't call it dominant 7th here because it's not on the actual 5 chord itself. It's just a matter of semantics. And to be honest, I typically call all major minor chords, I end up calling them dominant 7th chords anyway, even when they're not used on the dominant. But just keep in mind, it's just sort of a matter of semantics. Now, there's a couple other things we can do in minor. As you may remember from before, that if you alter the 7th note of a minor scale, you get harmonic minor. So the 7th note of our scale here is G. We don't want to mess with that one because we want our 7 chord to still be a major minor 7th chord right now. But there's also a G here in the 5 chord. And one of the things that we said about the 5 chord in natural minors, if you raise the 3rd, which is a harmonic minor alteration, you end up with a major 5 rather than a minor 5. So let's do that. So now we've got an E major triad here as opposed to an E minor triad. But diatonically, adding that 7th to the top here also results in a dominant 7th chord. So now we can call this 5/7. You may also recall the melodic minor scale where we raised both the 6th and 7th scale degrees. The 6th scale degree here is F. I don't really want to alter my 6th chord here, but if I alter the F in my minor 4 chord here, which is F right now, we'll change it to F sharp. So when we raise the F to F sharp, not only does the triad change from minor to major, it also turns this 7th chord into a major minor 7th chord. So we can call this 4/7. Now with modern chord symbols, we can name these as well. So the 4 chord we would simply just call D7. The 5 chord we would call E7. And for the 7 chord, we'd call this a G7 chord, just like we did with the 5 chord over in a major key. So this is really cool in minor keys, with a couple alterations to the harmonic and melodic minor scale in a couple places. The dominant or major minor 7th chord exists in 3 places rather than just in 1. So let's talk about the actual structure of a dominant 7th chord. The reason why they're also referred to as major minor 7th chords is because they're a major triad with an interval of a minor 7th stacked above the root note. So take any major triad. So for example, we have C, E, G. This is our C major triad. And stack a minor 7th interval above that. So the distance between C and B flat is that of a minor 7th. Now remember in the last video when we were talking about intervals, we said a minor seventh is 10 semitones above any given note. So if we start on C, we count starting on 0, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The note we land on is either B flat or A sharp. The seventh lands on the B line, so we go with the B flat enharmonic as opposed to the A sharp enharmonic, and we end up with a C7 chord, or a C major minor seventh chord. Let's do another one. Let's pick any just random major chord. Let's start on A. So an A major triad is A, C sharp, E. So there's our A major triad. Let's count 10 semitones above A. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And the note I land on is G. So let's add a G in there. And this is our A major minor seventh chord, or A, again, you can just refer to it as A7. So again, the distance between A and G is a minor seventh. Another way to do this is to count backward. If you recall this from the last video, instead of counting up 10 semitones, you can actually count backward, count down 2 semitones. So let's do another one. Let's say I want a major minor 7 chord starting on, let's do F. So an F major triad is F, A, C. So it's an F major triad. Let's count down, let's count backward 2 semitones starting on F. So 0, 1, 2. So the note we have to add is E flat or D sharp. The seventh up here is an E line, so we're going to go with the E flat enharmonic as opposed to the D sharp enharmonic. So let's add E flat. And there's our F7 or F major minor seventh chord. F, A, C, E flat. So that's just how you can figure out major minor seventh chords above any given root note. One of the cool things about major minor sevenths, and really seventh chords in general, is that you can kind of throw them in on any major triad in a song to kind of juice up the harmony a bit, sometimes even if they don't fit diatonically. So for example, it's pretty common to throw a seventh chord in on the 1 chord as a dominant or major minor seventh chord, even though the natural diatonic seventh chord that exists on a 1 chord is not a major minor seventh chord. It's actually a major seventh chord, which is a different type we'll talk about later. It's also common to throw it in on the 4 chord as well. In minor keys, the same thing goes over here for the 3 chord and for the 6 chord. It's very common to throw these in on those 2 chords as well. So let me just show you a short musical example I did with all triads and a melody, and then I'll alter a bunch of the major triads to be major minor sevenths, even if they don't all fit diatonically. All right, so off screen I created just a real quick, simple musical example in C major. You can see the top staff is just a piano melody. The middle staff are the piano chords, and the bottom staff is bass, and there's some drums underneath it too. If you go through and analyze the bass and chords, you'll see that in C major, this is a 1 chord, a 4 chord, a 6 chord, a 5 chord, and then 1, 4, 6, and then just for this one quarter note here, this is a 4 chord, 5, 1. So it's 1, 4, 6, 5, 1, 4, 6, 4, 5, 1. This is all with triads, no seventh chords whatsoever. So let me play this one first. All right, so now I have that same musical example, but I've added seventh chords at certain points. On the 1 chord, the 4 chord, not on the 6 chord because it's a minor triad, and on the 5 chords, I've added seventh chords. I didn't add a seventh chord here on this one little quarter note 4 chord just because it didn't sound good. And you'll also notice that most of these start on a triad, and then on the long notes, they jump down to a 7th chord. So this kind of juices up the harmony a little bit. And there you go, just two really simple examples, one with just triads and the other with dominant or major minor 7th chords substituted for the 1, 4, and 5 chords. All right, so that's it for this video. As you can see, there's a reason why I only introduced the major minor 7th chords today. If I covered all the other types of 7th chords and talked about inversions and voice leading, we ended up with a 2 or 3 hour video. So in the next few videos, we'll continue our discussion of 7th chords and how they're used. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching.